Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope everyone's doing well. It was about 2 months ago now, early March. I told y'all I had some changes probably coming to the layout and probably moving to the garage that's actually below the room where I'm currently located. And in that time, I've kind of been tweaking the plan a little bit. A lot of feedback from the community, which I very much appreciate. Um, and I've made the decision rather than use a 26-inch minimum radius on my main line, I'm going to take it out to 30. I still don't really have any intention of running passenger equipment per se. Most of my rolling stock is 40 foot, but I just think it's going to look better and operate that much better. And if I want to use the stray, late first generation diesel era E unit on a freight train, those things are 70 some feet long, and I think that'll just look better on broader curves and in general give me a little bit more flexibility for what I want to do. So I was able to do that without changing a whole lot. The aisles get pinched down just a little bit. That one didn't change. This one here and this one here got a little narrower as I worked that wider curve into the peninsula here. Um, so that's probably the biggest change. But doing that had kind of ripple effects all through the plan, which I'll just kind of cover here real quick, just so y'all see where I am. Originally I had this yard, this section highlighted in orange, all the way down against the bottom wall here. To make room for that broader curve, I had to move it up off the wall a little bit. I had room to do that. I had this extra space that I'm showing at the bottom, used to be up at the top. So that's a change. Another big thing I did was I needed to move. There's a curved turnout currently sitting right here, and I actually want to replace that with a straight turnout, move the curved one back a little bit to give me a third track here. So I got the ladder, the runaround, and now I've got the icing track moved down here, which will give me an opportunity to maybe make a nice craftsman kit, put it front and center. I think this is actually a little bit more accessible, right, from the switch lead here. As you're building a train and needing to ice down some reefers, this is more accessible than its current location, which was over here on the other side of the main, over in the industrial area. In my current operational scheme, I never really got the icing worked into the scheme, and part of that was just it was awkward to get to. So I've moved it here and picked up a second warehouse over here, and I'll probably have some structures and scenery and stuff all around here. I'm just kind of showing the rail served things here first of all. So that's a pretty substantial change. On the current layout, this line that comes out here ends right about here, and I use it as a rip track. I've moved the rip track to this location here and actually added a second track. So one track would represent cars that need repair, and the other, the new track that goes into the building, actually gives me a place to drop off supplies, parts, wheels, whatever, rather than the same track as the damaged cars. So I moved that. That used to be the rip track. This track back here, I've actually reworked the engine service area, and where I used to have a second turnout and things splitting off, and the whole thing kind of came off at a bit of an angle because I've lengthened the area down here. I lengthened the track, straightened them, dropped that turnout, and I now have this last track here. Let me just zoom in so it's easier to see. Sorry about that. So this back track here, if you follow that, actually ties into the industrial track now, rather than coming off the main like it did before. So this last back track here would be where things like sand and fuel are dropped off for use by the engines that are parked here. Kind of limited facilities here, not an engine house or anything like that, but a track for fuel, sand, etc. Let's see, I mentioned that. As I work my way up the yard a bit here, in its current iteration, the power plant is represented kind of here in this corner. and it's 2 tracks, and they're kind of short. I can fit maybe 5 hoppers if I'm being real careful about how I spot them. In this iteration, I've dropped the second track and significantly lengthened the first track. Looking at Google Maps, that's how the power plant's actually sort of constructed in this area that I'm loosely basing this all on. So this is a much longer, more significant looking industry, even though I dropped from 2 to 1 tracks. By lengthening it, and it's a flat, I probably have some power, smokestacks, etc., to make this really pop out. It's a much bigger building, looks much more substantial, and the kind of thing that you would need rail service for. Still working our way up the yard here. The water treatment plant is now back on the industrial lead. In the last iteration, I had it over in this area, and I had a creek coming through here. So I've moved the water treatment plant back here, removed the creek altogether, and lengthened all of these yard tracks that used to end in the last version right around here. I lengthened them. Just taking a look here. One of the things, the cars, the length of the cars, I had done the math wrong. I think I used 5 inches for a 40-foot HO scale car, and really if you measure one coupler to coupler, it's closer to 6 inches. So I reworked all my math with how long the tracks are and divided by 6 to get the cars that would fit on a track instead of, I might have used 5.5, but I'd rather be conservative here. So I changed that math. So even though some of these classification tracks here, I lengthen these tracks, that really lets me end up with the count of cars I thought I had in the first place. Another thing I did over here, by moving this whole section up, I actually slid the creek scene and the second sort of, open running area to the right. I had them kind of butted up against here. And the track used to kind of come around here and sweep left before coming around to the right. I've straightened that out and pushed all this stuff out. So now this is just a nice smooth 30-inch radius. And I'm getting a little red in some of these tracks because I've gone under my 30-inch minimum. But for the most part, the main at least is a 30-inch radius. And I felt like that looked a little bit better. And by virtue of moving the water treatment plant, I was also able to pick up, as I currently do, the first 2 classification tracks are double-ended. And I'll be able to continue with that with this design. In the last design, I had lost that. I think the last change I made in the yard is this crossover right here. It used to be right down here, right after the power plant. And actually it was right before the power plant. And just because I've got the room, I figured why not make for a longer runaround. I shoved it down the yard a bit. So I just moved the crossovers there. Let's see. The peninsula, I mentioned going from 26 to 30-inch radius. That actually gives me a little bit more room on the inside. So the only change I've made to the Deepwater Terminal is I picked up this little spur right here for asphalt transloading, and I've got some pictures of the prototype had an operation here. So I picture perhaps barges and such parked right here, or maybe even a ship. And I think I showed that newsprint picture in the last video coming off a ocean-going ship, something like that here, and then maybe another one parked over here, more of a tanker type, and transloading asphalt either from the ship to the cars or the cars to the ship. I'm not sure which direction. It doesn't really matter. Operationally, this would allow me to bring tank cars onto the Deepwater Terminal, which would be prototypical. I think looking at all the industry I already had there gives me enough for 2 good size trains to service the Deepwater Terminal area. I didn't make any changes to Manchester. This is how it was in the last version. I'm not adhering to that 30-inch radius on branch lines, and this is a branch line. And another note I'll just point out, I resisted the urge to put a spur in this area and have more industries to switch. And the reason for that you know, I've already got them fairly dense here, fairly dense across the back of the yard. Certainly got a lot of stuff going on in the Deepwater Terminal. But this creek scene here, this is my existing creek scene that's highlighted in that green box. It doesn't look like much in a track plan, but to actually leave a scene kind of wide open like this, it's really realistic, and it's actually one of my favorite scenes on my current layout. So kind of knowing that, I felt like, you know what, let me sort of do something similar here and not cram a bunch of stuff into this this module over here. Give me a little bit more open running. Like I say, it's just one of my favorite scenes. It came together really well, and I think it looks really realistic to have, you know, the big field and the track running behind it. It's just something, rather than have a spaghetti bowl, it just seems a little bit more prototypical to me. So I've resisted the urge to cram anything into this area over here. So that was a note I wanted to share. Trying to think, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. Been out of town the last couple of days, so I didn't get a whole lot done on the layout. You know, I've been doing a bunch of weathering and stuff, but so I thought, since I'd been working on tweaks to this plan over the past couple of months, let me share that with y'all. So I'd love to get your opinions, feedback, all that kind of stuff. I'll zoom back out so we can see the whole thing as I wrap up here. Anyway, I hope everyone is doing well, staying safe out there. I think we're almost through this thing. Get yourself vaccinated, be safe, and I will talk to y'all next week. Thanks, everybody.